There we go. What's going on, everybody? Champ is back, and we got ourselves another execution today, and I got myself a jar of iced tea. Mm. I was thinking this was going to be like hard cider or like that weird twisted ass tea shit that you get at the grocery store. No. Regular tea. Regular tea because we are 10 minutes, give or take, past my bedtime. But guess what? We have another execution today. I did double check to see if this thing did have any children, and unless you count an 18-year-old as a child, then yeah, I guess it does have children in it. So that's your trigger. If 18's not considered a child to you, and for a lot of people it's not because technically that's an adult, then that's what it is. So that's your warning. Let's go ahead and get it popping. This whole entire thing is brought to you by Final Verdict. Their link and the video description down below. I'm already tired. Holy shit. And as usual, leave your comments down below.
On July 14th, 2026, after spending nearly 37 years on death row,
Dude looks like Jigsaw from Saw, okay? Just throwing that out there.
Dennis Sochor was executed by lethal injection in Florida for the 1981 murder of an 18-year-old girl. But the night that led to his death sentence started at a New Year's Eve party at a bar called the Banana Boat. And what Dennis did that night, he had already done before. He was on probation for it, and then he did it once again.
What did you do? I have not watched these videos, okay? This is a blind reaction. I'm watching this right along with y'all. Oh, and I raised the volume up a little bit because I watched my past videos and I didn't realize how freaking quiet they were. Usually when I record videos at this high of a volume, the volume always like cuts out and like parts of it mute. So hopefully it doesn't happen that time. But what did you do?
It was New Year's Eve, 1981.
Happy New Year. I was not even born yet.
In Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Dennis Sochor and his brother Gary had been together since just after Christmas, when Gary drove down from Michigan to visit. That evening, the two of them took Dennis's work truck and headed to a place called the Banana Boat. It was a lounge on Commercial Boulevard with a tiki bar out back.
Oh boy.
By the time they got there, the place was already packed. People drinking, music going, everyone waiting to count down to midnight.
My kind of party. What did you do? I really want to know.
Somewhere across Fort Lauderdale, an 18-year-old named Patty Gifford was getting ready to go out too. Patty had only been in Florida for about 3 months.
You do not look 18. You look like you are like 23, 24. And I know that's supposed to be a negative comment because if you say a girl is older, then ooh, it's bad. I'm sorry, I'm just calling for what it is. R.I.P. because I'm assuming you're murdered.
She had grown up in eastern Massachusetts with 3 siblings who adored her and moved
What's her name?
to
Wait,
go
what's her
out
name?
too.
Patty.
Eastern Massachusetts with 3 siblings who adored her and moved to Fort Lauderdale with her high school sweetheart, a young man named Johnny Vassell. She worked as an aerobics instructor. She was healthy, she was fit, and she had her whole life ahead of her. Her boyfriend had to work that night, so she made plans with her friend Delta Harville instead. A mutual friend tended bar at the Banana Boat, so that's where they decided to go.
Wait. Oh, so these are 2 different people going out and they met in the same place.
Patty and Delta showed up and sat down at the tiki bar behind the lounge. Just 2 friends out on New Year's Eve. And then Dennis noticed her. Witnesses later told investigators that Dennis couldn't keep his eyes off Patty. He stared at her throughout the night. He stood too close. He tried to buy her drinks, and he lavished her with compliments. Patty tried to brush him off. She wasn't interested. And by midnight, she had switched from champagne to iced tea. She wasn't drunk, and she was just trying to enjoy her night.
Like, so I'm assuming she was like the DD that night.
At some point, someone snapped a photograph of Dennis lurking in the background behind Patty and Delta.
Ooh, so they weren't kidding. There he is. Yo.
random picture at a party. But that photograph would later become the single most important piece of evidence in the entire case. As the night wore on, Delta started feeling sick. She later told investigators she believed she had been drugged.
Bastard drugged her, didn't he?
Around 2 a.m., Patty helped walk her to the parking lot and put her in her car.
No. By 2 a.m., no way. I'd be out. I'd be out. I'm assuming these people started drinking when they were like around 10. I go to bed at 10, so that's not gonna work well for me. It's past 10, and I want to keep drinking this just to stay awake. It's giving me way too much energy, though. I'm starting to worry that I'm not gonna go back to sleep.
Sleep it off. Patty went back inside to settle her tab, but when she came back out, Delta was in no shape to drive. Dennis and Gary offered to take Patty to get breakfast while Delta slept. Patty said yes. She got in the truck with two men she had met just hours before, one of whom she had been trying to get away from all night, thinking they were going to grab some food, but they never took her to get food.
This is where I don't feel bad for you.
To get breakfast, no-shaped
Who's
drive.
Delta?
Dennis and Gary offered to take Patty to get breakfast while Delta slept. Patty said yes. She got in the truck with two men she had met just hours before, one of whom she had been trying to get away from all night, thinking they were going to grab some food, but they never took her to get food.
Why would you
What
say
happened
yes to
next
this?
came from Dennis's own mouth. 3 separate times on 3 separate tape recorders, Dennis told police what he did. He said that once they were alone, he asked Patty if she wanted to have sex. She said no. She had been saying no all night, and that should have been the end of it.
Why are you with them?
But Dennis grabbed her by the hair. Patty fought back. She screamed. She scratched at his face, and Dennis got angry. He started choking her. He squeezed until she stopped fighting, until she stopped moving, until she stopped breathing. And when it was over, he knew in his own words that he had probably just killed her. He left her body somewhere off a dirt road, and then he drove home. Patty Gifford's remains were never recovered. Her family never got to bury their daughter, and her brother Bobby spent 3 months walking through fields and ditches looking for his little sister.
Wait, even to this
But
day?
he never found her. A Broward County detective later said, the only mistake she made was going out with friends and celebrating New Year's Eve. But Dennis wasn't alone that night. His brother Gary had been in that truck too, and what Gary saw would eventually put Dennis on death row. Gary told the jury that after they left the banana boat, Dennis pulled over and stopped the truck. Gary heard screaming, Patty screaming for help. He
No.
jumped out, ran around to the other side, and found Dennis on top of her, pinning her hands to the ground. Gary picked up a rock and threw it at his brother. He yelled at him to stop. Dennis turned and looked at him, and Gary described that look to the court. He said his brother's eyes had rolled back in his head, and it looked like he was possessed by the devil.
Oh my God! What
Dennis
the fuck
told him
is
to get
this?
back in the truck, and Gary
My bad.
did.
Well, now you know snippet of what what I watch. Queso, Dashy, Mr. Nightmare, some crashes, and Chibi. Surprised Dashy's not in the mix.
He got in and sat there while his brother attacked an 18-year-old girl on the side of the road. He said he was afraid of his own brother, and that he never saw Patty again. The next morning, Gary found a woman's shoe, a sweater, and a set of keys inside the truck. He hid the keys, but Dennis found out and demanded them back.
Oh boy!
And a few days later, Gary went home to Michigan. He didn't call the police. It was Delta who raised the alarm. She woke up alone in her car around 5:30 a.m. Patty was gone.
Delta has got to be your friend, right? Yeah.
And when investigators went through the photos from that night, they found one with Dennis in the background. They released it to a local television station.
Right, and then they're like, "Wait a minute, who the hell is this guy?" And then they find out what happened.
Dennis saw his own face on the evening news, and he panicked, but not because he felt guilty. In his own words, he was terrified that he had committed what other people would see as another crime. Not Patty, not remorse. His first instinct was fear that he had been caught again. He fled that same day, drove to Tampa, abandoned the truck.
Did he kill before?
Took a bus to New Orleans. Same day.
Instinct
was fear that he had been caught again. He fled that same day, drove to Tampa, abandoned the truck, took a bus to New Orleans, and eventually he ended up in Atlanta. For 4.5 years, Dennis Sochor was a free man. The police didn't catch up with him until May 1986, when he was stopped in DeKalb County, Georgia, for suspicion of drunk driving. Investigators flew him to Atlanta, and Dennis confessed again. They brought him back to Florida, drove him to the banana boat, and he gave a second and third taped confession. But he couldn't remember where he left Patty's body. But the confessions weren't even the worst of it. His roommate in Atlanta, a man named Paul Jones, testified.
He must have done something worse than just strangle her. There must be more to the story than that.
His roommate in Atlanta, a man named Paul Jones, testified that Dennis once casually told him about choking someone and dumping the body out in the countryside near a drainage pipe. Jones said Dennis told him that if he had to, he would do it again, that the murder didn't bother him at all, and that women were, in Dennis's words, more or less a sexual tool, nothing more. An inmate named Michael Hickey, who was held with Dennis at the Broward County Jail, testified that Dennis walked up to him one day and asked how to discredit a witness. They talked for a while, and right before he walked away, Dennis said, "Yeah, in case you're wondering, I killed a bitch."
Okay. Lots to take in there. So basically you killed this person, you strangled her to death, you're arrested for it finally, and you're just bragging about it. Next move, you're surprised that you're in trouble for it in the first place. That's my prediction. Let's see what happens.
The jury heard all of it, and they convicted Dennis of kidnapping and first-degree murder. But the penalty phase is where this story takes a turn, and it started with two women the jury had never heard about.
Okay, this has to be where it does take the turn, because as far as I'm concerned, open shut case, not sure why you got death for that. Should be life without parole, open and shut case. But let's hear you guys out.
Takes a turn, and it started with two women the jury had never heard about. Dennis had confessed to raping two other women before the murder.
Control your fucking wiener. Oh my God.
The first happened in Michigan in 1979. He asked a woman for a ride home. Once they were alone, he choked her unconscious. When she came to, she had defecated on herself. Dennis raped her, and then he took her to his house, allowed her to shower, and raped her 2 more times. When a Michigan detective asked Dennis about it,
just covered in crap. Doesn't matter.
He described what it felt like. "All I can relate it to was like an airplane jump," he said. "There was no feeling, no emotion. At that point, I wasn't existing."
So you're a psycho. Okay.
No feeling, no emotion. That's how he described raping an unconscious woman.
Yeah, so you're a psycho, not a sociopath. Here's the difference, by the way. I think I hope I get this right. A sociopath will torture you because he wants something from you, like a confession or information or something. But a psycho will torture you because they get some sort of thrill out of it. Does that make any sense?
The second time it happened, in Fort Lauderdale in 1980. Dennis ambushed a 19-year-old woman in a parking lot. He choked her, threatened to stab her, and dragged her into a camper shell on the back of a truck. He assaulted her in every way possible and bit her repeatedly. He became...
The fuck are you, a rabid wolf? Calm down.
Became violent specifically because he was angry he had not climaxed. This was the crime Dennis was on probation for when he sat down next to Patty at the banana boat.
How are you at the bar if you're on probation? Especially if your previous crimes also involved alcohol. You obviously can't handle it well. Why are you at a bar if you're on probation? Or do we just not care about it? You just violate the probation. If I go back to jail, I go back to jail.
Dennis's own ex-wife also took the stand. She was married to him for less than 2 years. She testified that he had assaulted her at least 30 times in a single year.
30 times in a single year? Calm down.
He said his eyes would glaze over and he'd get wild. If he wanted sex, he got it, because he would get violent if he didn't. And then the state's medical examiner told the jury something about how Patty died that no one in that courtroom forgot. He said choking is a slow and painful way to die. In mitigation, Dennis's family described a childhood of violence. His father had been a boxer who beat him relentlessly. His sister had to physically pull their father off of him.
Doesn't matter. I mean, it's traumatic and I get it, but the question is not what the fuck happened to you as a kid. The question is how the hell are you handling it as an adult? Not everything. There are some things that are pretty like pushing the threshold, but that's the thing.
Their father would bang Dennis's head against the wall until he slid to the floor and then keep kicking him.
That sucks.
And his own parents admitted to the abuse on the stand, but the jury heard everything else, and they recommended death by a vote of 10-2. And what followed were decades of appeals. Dennis threw everything he had at the courts: bad lawyers, hidden evidence, brain damage. He even claimed his brother Gary was actually involved in the murder. And at one point, he argued there was no evidence Patty Gifford was even dead, because her body had never been found.
That's the thing. How the fuck is her body never found? He has to be lying about where he hid the body, because how the hell is the body never found?
The man who confessed 3 times on tape to choking her to death was now arguing there was no proof she was gone. But none of it worked. Every motion was denied, and every appeal was rejected. During his nearly 37 years on death row, a woman from Norway became Dennis's pen pal. She wrote a book about him called Dennis, My Friend on Death Row.
Might have to look at that on Audible.
In it, Dennis wrote, "I am sure many people think that we deserve to die, but I am still a sensitive person who cares about those who suffer in the world." A sensitive person who cares about those who suffer. The same man who called women a sexual tool.
Yeah,
the same man who described
exactly. I don't believe you either. Yeah, I don't believe you either.
a woman as feeling like an airplane jump.
Dumb.
Then, in the final weeks before his
There it is. If you're gonna be executed, it's always this prison in Florida. Always.
execution,
Florida State
Dennis's
Prison.
attorneys argued that lethal injection could cause a sensation that feels like drowning. They said Dennis would prefer to die by firing squad instead. The man who strangled an 18-year-old girl to death with his bare hands was worried that his own death might be painful. But the Florida Supreme
Well, Ted Bundy was like that. Ted Bundy was even terrified to die. I think a firing squad probably, well, I don't know.
Court called the argument meritless. Dennis also sent a letter to Patty's family through prison staff, expressing what he called his remorse and sorrow for the pain he had caused. 44 years later, his spiritual advisor said Dennis wanted people to know that if he could help locate Patty's body, he would.
I think you know where the body is. You're just not telling anybody where it is for who knows what reason. How is her body never found? That baffles me.
That he was simply too drunk to remember where he left her.
Well, maybe that's a good excuse. you, you still should know. Like, I mean, it's not like people kill somebody every single day and they're just so numbed down to it, like it's just a regular everyday task. Even if you were hammered, you'd still be like, oh shit, I just killed somebody, and you would definitely remember it. I don't think there's, like, if I were to kill anybody and my goal was to drink so much that I would not be able to remember any of it, I don't think there's any amount of alcohol that would do that. Unless I literally drank to death. There's no way. There's no way.
Patty's sister Marilyn had an answer for that. It's bad enough what he did to her, she said, but he's had all this time to repent, to think about what he did, so why not give her back? Then, on July 14th, 2026, Dennis's final day came. He woke up at 4:48 in the
He seriously looks like Jigsaw. I'm sorry. Yo, you look like, what's his name? Steve Kramer? His last name's Kramer. John Kramer. You seriously look like Jigsaw.
morning and met with one visitor and a spiritual advisor during the day. He was offered a last meal, but he declined. Later that day, he was escorted to the execution chamber. At 6 p.m., the curtain to the witness room went up. Dennis was already strapped to the gurney with an IV in his arm. The warden asked if he had any last words, and he did. He apologized several times to the Gifford family. He said he was deeply sorry for his actions. He thanked his own loved ones for their support. And then he commended his spirit to Jesus Christ. The drugs began flowing at 6:03 p.m. Dennis underwent about a minute of heavy breathing, followed by a few seconds of sputtering. Then complete stillness. The warden looked into his eyes, shook his shoulders, and called his name. But there was no response. Dennis Sochor was pronounced dead at 6:16 p.m. He was 74 years old. He was the 10th person executed in Florida that year.
Damn.
What do you think? Has justice been served?
I don't know. That's another controversial one where does he actually deserve to die? I mean, he deserves prison time for sure. But well, that's what happened today. He died at around 6 o'clock. I was just at home chilling watching TV at the time. So there you go. Another death row. 2 videos right here. Oh my god.